Once upon a time, a long while ago, there were 4 little people whose names were Violet, Slingsby, Guy, and Lionel, and they all thought they should like to see the world. They bought a large boat to sail around the world by sea, and then they were to come back on the other side by land. They took a small cat to steer, besides an elderly quangle-wangle who had to cook dinner and make the tea, for which purposes they took a large kettle. For the first 10 days, they sailed on beautifully and found plenty to eat, as there were lots of fish, and they only had to take them out of the sea with a long spoon, when the quangle-wangle instantly cooked them, and the pussycat was fed with the bones, with which she expressed herself pleased on the whole, so that all the party were very happy. During the daytime, Violet chiefly occupied herself in putting salt water into the churn, while her 3 brothers churned it violently, in the hope that it would turn into butter, which it seldom, if ever, did. When they had landed, they walked about, but found to their great surprise that the island was quite full of veal cutlets and chocolate drops, and nothing else. So they all climbed up the single high tree to discover if there were any people. But having remained on the top of the tree for a week and not seeing anybody, they naturally concluded that there were no inhabitants. The next thing that happened to them was in a narrow part of the sea, which was so entirely full of fishes that the boat could go no further. So they remained there about 6 weeks, till they had eaten nearly all the fishes, which were sold and already cooked and covered with shrimp sauce, that there was no trouble whatever. As the few fishes that remained uneaten complained of the cold, Violet most amiably knitted a small woolen frock for several of the fishes, and Slingsby administered some opium drops to them, through which kindness they became quite warm and slept soundly. Then they came to a country which was wholly covered with immense orange trees of a vast size, full of fruit. So they all landed, and a most dreadfully high wind rose, the calamity of the oranges falling down on their heads by millions and millions, which thumped and bumped and bumped and thumped them. Nevertheless, they got safely to the boat, although the quangle-wangle's right foot was so knocked about that he had to sit with his head in his slipper for at least a week. This event made them all for a time rather melancholy, and perhaps they might never have become less so, had not Lionel continued to stand on one leg and whistle to them in a loud and lively manner, which diverted the whole party so extremely that they gradually recovered their spirits. After sailing on calmly for several more days, they came to another country, where they were much pleased and surprised to see a countless multitude of white mice with red eyes, all sitting in a great circle, slowly eating custard pudding with the most satisfactory and polite demeanour. They gave a walnut shell half full of custard diluted with water. This displeased Guy, who said, "Out of such a lot of pudding, you might have spared a somewhat larger quantity." No sooner had he finished speaking than all the mice turned round at once and sneezed at him in an appalling and vindictive manner. Guy rushed back to the boat, having first shied his cap into the middle of the custard pudding, by which means he completely spoiled the mice's dinner. By and by, the 4 children came to a country where there were no houses, but only an incredibly innumerable number of large bottles without corks. Each of these blue bottles contained a blue bottle fly. As a token of parting respect and esteem, Violet made a curtsy quite down to the ground and stuck one of her few remaining parrot tail feathers into the back hair of the most pleasing of the blue bottle flies. And thus they left that happy shore forever. As the travellers were passing a low tract of sand, they perceived an unusual and gratifying spectacle, namely a large number of crabs and crawfish, perhaps 600 or 700, endeavouring to disentangle a vast heap of pale pink worsted, which they moistened at intervals with a fluid composed of lavender water and white wine negus. After this, the 4 little people sailed on again, till they came to a vast and wide plain of astonishing dimensions. But as the travellers walked onwards, there appeared in the extreme and dim distance a single object, which on nearer approach seemed to be somebody in a large white wig, sitting on an armchair made of sponge cakes and oyster shells. "It does not quite look like a human being," said Violet doubtfully, nor could they make out what it really was, till the Quangle Wangle, who had previously been round the world, exclaimed softly in a loud voice, "It is the cooperative cauliflower!" And so, in truth, it was, and they soon found that what they had taken for an immense wig was in reality the top of the cauliflower. Shortly after this, the travellers were obliged to sail directly below some high overhanging rocks, from the top of one of which a particularly odious little boy dressed in rose-coloured knickerbockers and with a pewter plate upon his head threw an enormous pumpkin at the boat. By which it was instantly upset. What was their horror on seeing the boat, including the churn and the tea kettle, in the mouth of an enormous sea spider, an aquatic and ferocious creature truly dreadful to behold. In a moment, the beautiful boat was bitten into 55,000,000,100,000,000,000 bits, and it instantly became quite clear that Violet, Slingsby, Guy, and Lionel could no longer preliminate their voyage by sea. four travellers were therefore obliged to resolve on pursuing their wanderings by land, and very fortunately they happened to pass by an elderly rhinoceros, on which they seized, and all four mounting on his back, the quangle-wangle sitting on his horn and holding on by his ears, and the pussy-cat swinging at the end of his tail. They set off. In less than 18 weeks, they all arrived safely at home, where they were received by their admiring relatives with joy tempered with contempt, and where they finally resolved to carry out the rest of their travelling plans at some more favourable opportunity.